Welcome to the finish line with Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today I'd like to finish this little wall hanging. It looks like a tree, and it's made with all the different sewing notions. I did do a video of this, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. So I have it all basted together, and I have used sew tights, just those little magnets to baste it together. It's small, so that will be fine. And I'm going to be using a nylon clear monofilament thread, and that way I won't have to worry about any color changes. What I want to do is I want to quilt an overall pattern between the applique and the border, and then I want to continue this stripe theme and stripe the border. So let's get this started. I'm just going to do some fun stippling and some straight line quilting. When I talk about a stippling pattern, what it is just a small stitch going in all different directions. So I'm just kind of doing these little puzzle pieces as I go along. Now, when you do this type of quilting, it is important that you go in an all-over area, not try to do it in a row. If you're doing this in a row, then you get to see more of a row pattern. Even if you fill it in, you're going to start to see that it looks more like rows. And this is great if this is the look you're looking for. But I want to have an all-over pattern. So what I'm going to do, in my mind, I'm going to visualize an area, and that's the area that I want to do that stippling in. Then I'm going to envision the next small area and quilt that area. Now, if you wanted to stipple a border, that's where you can envision this as a long area and just stipple going in this long row. That's going to give it more of a long visual effect, and it's perfect for borders. But for an area where I want it to look as if there's no start, no ending, and no rows, I'm going to visualize sections. As I'm quilting, I will want to get into little areas like this. And that's where the clear monofilament thread is going to come in handy. I'm going to be able to quilt all over, get as close as I can to this applique work. If I do stitch over a little bit, it's fine. You're not going to really see it with the clear thread. But what I want to do is stipple until I get to an area where I've had a color change. And then I'm going to be able to just stitch right into this area, do some stitching, and turn around and stitch right back out. The only area that I'm going to have to either cut my threads or go over would be this area here where I have no separation of fabric colors. There is a separation here, but in here I do not have a separation. If you do want to cross over where you are going to have a line sort of looks like how it should be. So I might have a line here in that pair of scissors and here. I do not want to do any quilting on my applique. I just want the quilting on the back side. So I'm going to try as much as I can to go into those little sections. So to get the stippling started, what we can do is look at an area that we're going to want to start inside. And that would be, for an example, the inside of this ruler. There's not a lot of area for me to stipple. So for me to bounce in and bounce out is a little bit more difficult. But I will be able to start in here and stipple, come out, and then I have that free area. There's a lot of different companies that make this beautiful monofilament thread. You can get it in clear, and you can also get it in a smoky color. If you have a light color, you want this clear. If it's a medium and dark, you're going to want the smoky color, but they both react the same way. The thread is very thin, so you might want to consider starting with a Microtech needle 7010. And because the thread is a little bit kinky, You might want to consider putting a thread net on top of that thread. And that way it comes off a little bit smoother. It's not going to kink off. I have never had to adjust my machine, but every machine has its own personality, so you might need to change that tension a little bit. When I start, I am going to pull up my bobbin thread and hold both ends. I'm going to do a couple of stitches to anchor it. I do like to wear gloves, but of course the quilting is all up to you. I can move those sew tights and just do a little bit until I finish this area. Then I'm going to come up to that one stitch. And I can stitch right up. Some areas are going to be so small that I will just need to do a straight stitch to get started. And then just do a little bit of a curve until you get out. Now I'm going to be able to adjust it. So this is the area that I'm going to want to start to stipple. When you come to that edge, I could just semi-trail around it. And this is the area I'm going to cross over, give a little bit of a quilt, come back over. When I get to another area, I'm going to visualize another small area. I really find that just visualizing this area alone, I'm not concentrating on the rest of the quilt. I'm just concentrating on a small area. I do want to mention these little sew tights. If you're using them for basting, you will have to keep in mind that you do not want them to hit this metal plate of your machine, because then it's going to hold that quilt. So we do need to remove them so that it's just hitting a surface, well, that's not magnetic. My stippling is all done between these two patterns. I can now go back and trace around the outside, and that's going to give it a little bit more definition. Once I've stitched all around my applique, I did stitch in the ditch right there along that edge. And here I have a seam. I'm going to stitch and stop right there in that corner. I'm now done all of the center. I will need to work on this striped border. What I want to do is stitch down to this edge, over, up, over. So I'm always doing this. I'm not coming off of this quilt. I'm going to stay on the quilt, but I want to stay so that seam is right close to this edge, but not too much that I'm going to trim it off. So anywhere between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. Now you can free motion that if you'd like, or you can use a ruler. The wall hanging is all quilted. With that clear thread, you can barely see the stitching. You only see the textures. Even when I didn't stay on track, it doesn't look that bad. I stitched here, around here, and came back down, and you can barely see that stitching. So some of it I did cross over, but you really don't see that crossover when the whole quilt is done. And the back, because I used the white thread, you don't notice much. You just notice that texture. This wall hanging, I will need to add some buttons and the binding to finish it, but the quilting is all done. Stitching with that clear thread is a lot of fun. It goes quite quickly because we do not have to be so precise than we would with a colored thread. And it gives us more of a textured look. You don't necessarily see the thread. I do hope you give it a try, and as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I do have a newsletter. It's all called and it's all under Sew Very Easy. And be sure to make every day a Sewtacular day. Bye now.